652 will be our song of encouragement, number 652.
Good evening. Great to see all of you here tonight. Glad that you decided to come out on a nice night like this and talk about God's things and worship Him with good people and spend a few moments studying His Word, speaking to Him in prayer, and getting to know a little bit more about your brothers and sisters. I'd like to encourage you, follow along in your Bible if you can. And if you struggle with that, we want you to know there's no shame in not knowing your books of the Bible. We'd be happy to provide you with the notes and the information that's in this lesson. After this service is over, you can peruse those things at your leisure and do that. And if you have questions about things that you hear tonight or things that are being done here, maybe it's different than what you're used to. Maybe these aren't the kinds of things that you're used to seeing at church. We'd like for you to ask us questions about those things. We'd be happy to talk with you about them even tonight and study the Bible with you just a little bit more. I don't think there's anything more important than making sure that God is pleased with us. Do you? That's why we do the things that we do here. And we hope that we can encourage you to do the same as we study along from God's Word together. I've had just a wonderful day. I did miss Bill a little bit, which is strange. I didn't think that was going to happen, but I did. Missed him a little bit. But I got to spend the day with the elder Beauvays. The old two right there. Not the young ones so much. That was fun too. I got to see them for a minute. I got to go to the Oriole Institute, and that was fantastic. Got to see some old stuff. It's even older than Bill's stuff at his house. It was really neat. Really enjoyed that. And then had a fabulous meal with the Lopez family. Oh, I think you all are trying to kill me. The food is just so delicious. And I'm expected to be moderate. That's cruel. That is cruel and unusual. Let me ask you if you've recognized this lady that I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight. When I started preaching, there was a lady, I went to this little congregation, and she was feeding me lunch afterward, and she was telling me about how important it was for her to go to Bible class because she wanted to get credit for coming. And I kind of chuckled and I said, excuse me? He said, I want to get credit for coming. I know the Lord's watching. And I know He's up there. He's checking me off. And she was dead serious. Dead serious. Is that the way you operate in your faith? You got a checklist and you're just ticking off boxes? How about this? You recognize this person? They're on fire for the gospel because they've just been converted. And they're so excited. And they leave from this baptismal pool to go out into the world that they live in. And they're determined that night, I'm going to convert everybody I know, everybody I'm related to, everybody I work with, everybody I go to school with, everybody I've ever met. I'm going to get on the phone after I convert all those people and convert everybody I've ever talked to. And 6 months later, they're back in the world. Have you seen that happen? Passion is what we call in our world this motivational force that takes someone who is a hobbyist and makes them a professional. Somebody who is only good at something, they become great at something. Someone who was only moderately involved becomes consumed with it. This passion we talk about is what launches ships into war. It's what lays the foundation of skyscrapers. It's what builds bridges. This passion for continuance or for improvement or whatever it is, passion is a driving force in our world. And it's not any different in your faith. And we may not use the word passion, but there's an aspect of your faith that if it's improperly executed, if it's not part of what you are, your faith will not survive. In the Bible, we regularly refer to that as zeal. This idea of zeal, it matches very closely it gets translated as zeal, and sometimes it gets translated as jealous. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later maybe. But the idea that there is a bubbling, boiling source of energy within you, and it just burns red hot. If it's a metal, it glows with heat. If it's a liquid, it boils. If it's some other substance, it actually catches fire. That's the kind of thing. That's what zeal is. It's this burning and boiling and bubbling within you. It's a passion for what it is that God wants you to do. People who are zealous for good works, Titus 2, verses 14, 15 talk about that. But the way Jesus talks about it is this, in Mark the 12th chapter, verse 30. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. Now, what is he trying to say to us? Love the Lord your God with all of these things. Is he saying there's a checklist that you need to go down and make sure all of those things. And therefore, when we come to worship services, there must be two songs, one a prayer in the middle, then the preaching, and then we have an invitation song, and then we'll have some announcements, and then we'll have that done here, and that is the way it goes. That's the way, and thus it shall be written, and thus it shall be done. We have a checklist like that? We've got these 5 things. These are 5 acts of worship, and these are the 5 steps of salvation. You just check these things off, and there it is. You checked all the boxes, into heaven you go. You get it punched in your card, and there you go. Is that what we're talking about? Sacraments? Activities? Connect the dot salvation? When Jesus says this right here, I'm convinced this is going to keep some people out of heaven who are determined right now that they're going because they're in the right church. They found the church that has the right name on the sign. And they found the right doctrine. They can find it right there in the book. And since they're doing everything right, God's going to have to owe them some salvation. Isn't that right? Try again. This is what Jesus wants. Now, may I assure you that if Jesus gets all of this from you, you will find the right church, and you won't quit until you do. You will believe and obey the right doctrine, and you won't stop until you find it. Does that make sense? But you've got to pursue God with everything that you've got. With all of your being, every aspect of yourself, every part of your intellect and all of your emotions, the feelings and the thoughts and all of it. It just ties all together very nicely. That's what he wants. And you know and I know that is easier said than done consistently. There's the problem, isn't it? What Jesus expects, what he wants from us, can be very difficult to maintain. Do you know why that's true? Because it consumes a lot of energy. It's exhausting if you do it right. If you pursue God the way you're supposed to, it will fatigue you. Because if he's getting all of you, he gets every day of your life. He gets you at work, and he gets you at home, and he gets you at play. And he gets you thinking about things that the rest of the world doesn't think about. My coworkers, not only are they doing their jobs, but are they going to heaven? The people in my family, not only are they safe and fed, but are they going to heaven? The people that I recreate with, not only are they fun and do they follow the rules of our particular game, and are we succeeding in this together, or whatever, but are they going to heaven? You've got the weight of the world on your shoulders when you're doing this. Am I wrong? So what do? We settle in to a nice, comfortable simmer. No boiling. No open flames, please. Just sort of a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling. Not so much a boiling as much as a blanket. Nice and warm on a cold winter's night. Not overly disturbed, not overly upset, not overly taxed in any way. But I got mine, and I'm all good. I'm saved. Why do we do that? Why do we settle into that sort of self-absorbed mentality? It's because we lose our passion. We lose our zeal for the Lord's things. What happens? We get confused. We confuse what is important with what is urgent. We confuse what is common with what is right. We confuse what is popular with what is correct. And we also get distracted. Have you ever made fun of fish? I used to make fun of fish all the time. Fish are so dumb. They make sheep look like scholars getting scholarships to go to Oxford. I mean, sheep are really dumb. Look at the lures that the fish follow. They shine and they flip and they twist and they're bright colored and stuff like that. And you're like, really? You fell for that? Fish comes up out of the water on the end of some fisherman's line. And you say, man, how did you ever fall for that business? That's ridiculous. A glowworm. And we do the same thing. We fall for the same dumb tricks that we've seen for thousands of years other people falling for. We fall for the same thing we've seen other people do time after time after time. We get distracted by what's going on around us, and it gets us away from what should be going on in us. And we get clouded, and we get busy. And all of these things happen, and what happens is this, that Jesus is describing for us this scenario. We are the sheep of His pasture. We are His sheep, and He is our shepherd. And I want you to see in the book of John, in chapter 10, this is what Jesus wants to portray for us about being His sheep. John, the 10th chapter, starting in verse 7. Then Jesus said to them again, John 10, verse 7, Then Jesus said to them again, Most assuredly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief does not come except to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life, and that they may have it more abundantly. Do you see what it is that Jesus wants you to have? Don't mistake me for Joel Osteen. I'm so much fatter and better looking than he is. That is a mistake you mustn't make. I'm not telling you to have your best life now. And I'm not preaching to you about the gospel of health and wealth. What I'm saying is, Jesus meant for your life as a Christian to be more fulfilling than the life of a non-Christian. He meant for your life to be abundant and fulfilling on a completely different level than the people of the world. And in order for that to be true, you've got to have the kind of passion for following Him that He imagined when He says, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your mind, all of your strength. That's what it takes. And so what I'm going to propose to you for the rest of the time we have here tonight is that there are thieves in your life. When you're not being zealous for God, when you feel all of the passion for pursuing God has been sapped out of your life, and I see people like that here tonight. I see you. I see what's going on. I know how you feel. I felt the same way. I'm going to suggest to you a few things. And I think I can just about guarantee you, if the passion for following the Lord has gone out of your life, one of these things is the reason, or maybe a combination of these things is the reason. And you can tell me after we're done if that's not true. If you are not as zealous or as passionate about Jesus and your faith and the Lord and the church as you once were, let's find out what it is that's stealing all that joy, that's robbing you of the passion and the zeal that you need to be having that will fulfill you and give you this abundant life. Let's figure out what it is, okay? All right, let's do that. Number one. Welcome to 2014 United States of America. An unbalanced schedule. Go, 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 go. Make the money. Go to bed. Make the money. Go to bed. Make the money. And then die. And so we go and we go and we go and we go and we go. We just keep on going. You know, the book of Ecclesiastes tells us there is a time for everything. There's a season for every purpose under heaven. You have to have intake and outgo. You have to have periods of activity and you have to have periods of rest. You can talk to any medical professional in the world, and they'll tell you one of the biggest problems that people who are stressed experience is they get sick easier than people who are not stressed. People who do not get enough rest, they're almost always sicker than people who get plenty of rest. The people who get plenty of rest, they think better, they work better, they enjoy life more. There's just all kinds of things. We got sleep clinics all over the United States now, putting those elephant mask things on people so they can breathe at night in order to assure that they get a full night of sleep, because they're usually only laying down for 6 to 7 hours. And that's not enough. Now, why are we doing that? There are only a couple of reasons. Some of us are working our fingers to the bone. And what are we doing it for? Well, we want to give our kids the things we didn't have. Are you kidding me? Give your kids the things they need. They don't need nicer shoes. They don't need bigger cars and houses. They need parents. They need people to be at home with them and teaching them right from wrong and taking them to the Lord and saying, this is the model. Even if I make a mistake, you follow Him. That's what they need. They don't need more money. Poor people can be happy. Did you hear that? We'll talk more about that in just a minute. But you can be plenty happy. Jesus would get away by Himself with the Father. And He'd pray. You see Jesus, Matthew the 14th chapter in verse 13, taking advantage of a little rest Himself. You can see in Mark the 6th chapter in verse 31, they were so busy teaching the gospel of the kingdom, people were coming and going all the time. It says they did not even have time to eat. I don't understand. They did not even have time to eat. And what did Jesus prescribe there? Come aside and rest a while. God made you. He knows you need to rest. He knows that you need to take a break. In order to be optimal, in order to be completely functional, you need to take breaks. You've got to get enough rest. You've got to take care of yourself. And if your passion is going, it's because you're burning out. Some of the times what happens, now please don't be lazy and take advantage of this. And then sometimes after you've had 8 hours of sleep and someone catches you taking a 2-hour nap in the middle of the day, you say, well, the preacher said you got to come aside and rest a while or once in a while. Please don't do that. Don't claim my name is attached to that. Jesus also said in John the 9th chapter, there is a time to work. You need to work while it is day. The night's coming when no man can work. You've got to take advantage of the opportunities. Seize every day. Redeem every opportunity. The book of Ephesians says in chapter 5. That is what we're supposed to do. But listen, you've got to balance that. And I tell you, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm horrible at balancing. I'm either wanting God to do it all nearly miraculously, or I'm wanting to do it all myself and I don't ask Him for help. You bad about that? Well, you got to balance that stuff out or it'll get you. Well, we've talked a couple of times about talents here, and I think it's worthwhile to just refresh this. In the book of 1 Peter chapter 4, Peter says, as each one has received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. God put things in you that make you beneficial to the church. Now, your talents you should be using to benefit the church. Well, I just share this one more thing with you about talents. We talked about this last night a little bit, but there are some beautiful young girls at the Expressway Church of Christ. Beautiful. And there have been for years now. Can I just suggest to you that is a talent that you can use for the Lord. It was a talent that served Esther very well, by the way. That was something God gave her. She didn't have to work for it. She just was that. And I cannot tell you how many of our young girls at church going to school, some boy says, hey, good looking, you want to go out with me? And of course, no one ever says that now. That's old man talk for, hey, can I call you or something? I don't know how they say it. Anyway. And so this young girl will say, well, you want to see me? I'm going to be at the Expressway Church of Christ at 7:30 on Wednesday evening. If you're there, that's where I'll be. You come to class, I'll sit next to you. You want to see me? I'm going to be at church 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. If you come, I'll sit next to you in class. You want to see me? I'm going to be at church 6 o'clock Sunday evening. I'll share a songbook with you. Oh, hello. There are 4 young men in our congregation who are baptized believers in Christ who came because some good-looking girl wanted them to come to church. Only one of them is married to the one that he came after. See, that's a talent that you can use for the Lord. And that's not traditionally one of the things we think of. It's a talent you can use for the Lord. You have something like that you can use to bring other people to Christ one step closer to the Lord. And if you don't use it, it's no wonder you don't have any passion for God. You ought to be ashamed. If you're not using what it is that is inside you, that God put in you for His purposes, of course you don't have any passion. Of course you don't feel all the joy you're supposed to feel. You're not using everything God gave you to use. And that would make everybody feel kind of bad, don't you think? One of the worst is an unconfessed sin. Sometimes people are just devoid of all of their joy and passion in the Lord because what's happening is that they've got a dirty secret that they're harboring. They either think nobody knows or they're afraid some people know. And that secret stays inside of them and it just rots and it burns and it hurts. And even if they're getting away with it, the getting away with it makes them feel bad because these people think there's something that they're not. But let me tell you, you don't ever get away with anything with God. You may have me snowed. Man, you can fool me somewhat easily because I want to believe that you're good. I am biased against your badness. The fact that you come to church and you make the effort, that makes me want to believe anything you say that's good about you. I want that to be true like everything. And if I find out that it's not true, I am disappointed. Not just in what you've done, but I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't pick up on it. You know? Silly. That's just silly. You don't ever get away with it from God. Now, I want you to read what the psalmist says in Psalm 38 about this very kind of thing. Guilt just absolutely pollutes the soul. You cannot feel enthusiasm for the Lord and guilt simultaneously. Did everybody hear me? You cannot feel enthusiasm for the Lord and guilt simultaneously. It will not work. They don't take the same highways. They don't hang out in the same places. Psalm 38 verse 4. For my iniquities have gone over my head like a heavy burden. They are too heavy for me. Look what he says in verse 6. I am troubled. I am bowed down greatly. I go mourning all the day long. If you've got sin in your life that's unconfessed, that's still yours, it belongs to you, well, of course you don't have any passion or joy in the Lord. You're at odds with Him. You are harboring in your heart the very thing He came to eradicate. You're holding in your heart the one thing that's keeping you from being friends with the Lord of heaven. You're holding on to the one thing, the disease that He came to cure. And He says, if you're a Christian, 1 John 1 and verse 9, if you confess your sin, He is faithful and just to forgive you your sin and cleanse you from all unrighteousness. Now that's what He promises. So why would you continue hanging on to that? In fact, let me just say this. If there's a Christian in this audience who's holding on to some secret sin, they think they've held it and kept it away from everybody, and they know it's consuming them and killing their joy. If you'll come forward right now and confess that, we'll pray with you. I'll stop preaching right this minute. It'll be worth it. Wouldn't you agree, brethren? Our time would have been well spent if I don't say anything else. And if you come forward at any time during the time I'm talking, we'll just stop what we're doing and take care of you. That will be worth it. To bring one more sheep back into the fold. Another thing that absolutely kills your joy and robs you of this passion that Jesus wants you to have is an unresolved conflict. Conflict is some of the most inefficient emotional stuff you can have happen to you. There's an awful lot of energy expended internally, and it doesn't do a thing to take care of the problem. Not a thing. The book of Job, chapter 5 and verse 2 says, for wrath kills a foolish man, and envy slays a simple one. If you live in a situation where you are constantly in conflict with somebody in your family, in the local church, of course you're miserable. I don't know how you have any joy at all. Because conflict is always accompanied by her ugly stepsisters. Resentment, bitterness, and anger. Oh, and then there's cousins like suspicion and paranoia. Just a terrible, ugly family union. Take awful pictures. It's just a horrifying, just abysmal mass of things that grow in this ugly space inside your soul. When you're constantly in conflict with somebody else, you see that person and it makes you grit your teeth. You just clench your fist and you just think to yourself, oh, I just want to... And every time you see that person, that's the way you feel. And them are like, the joy of the Lord is my... Really? No, it's not. It is well with my soul. I just want to punch her right in the mouth. Is that right? People walk around in churches and think this. Now, you just think about this. Do you think there's a separate place in heaven for the people you don't get along with? Is that what you think? You're going to be up on this mansion up on the hill because you're, after all, you're the right one, right? You're the good one. You got this beautiful place set up for you on the mansion on the hill, and that person there, they're still coming to church. Oh, I just don't like them. They're going to be in this little shanty town. It's probably going to be outside the gate, you know, because heaven's a gated community. You've heard that, right? Is that the picture that you've got painted? That's not realistic in the slightest. It's interesting when Jesus says, in my Father's house, singular, are many mansions. It almost sounds like a great big apartment block of condominiums, is what it sounds like. We're all going to be neighbors. You better get used to the people around you, because if you go to heaven, then they go to heaven. But what if the Lord is really serious when He says what He says in Matthew the 6th chapter, and Matthew the 5th chapter, and Matthew the 18th chapter about forgiving? And if you don't forgive your brother, you can forget being forgiven by your Father. Amen. Do you think He's serious about that? Yes, He says that often enough. I believe He is. And I want you to get in your head what He says in Colossians the 3rd chapter, when He talks about that you should be tenderhearted and forgiving, just as your Father, for the sake of Jesus, was that way toward you. If you are in conflict with somebody all the time, of course you don't have any energy left over to be passionate and boiling over for the Lord. You're internally confused constantly. Now you're going to have to resolve it. Please don't misunderstand me. When I say resolve it, I don't mean you just got to make nice. I mean you got to resolve it. Get to the core of it and get it fixed. If there is sin, it must be repented of. If there's a bad attitude, it needs to be changed. If there's wrongdoing, it needs to be turned around. If there is something stinking about your thinking, it needs to be corrected. That's how you get things resolved. People who fight about stuff and then just make nice, that was a waste of energy to fight. Listen, I don't like fighting. But my wife and I have an agreement. If we think it's worth fighting about, we're going to settle that business. If it's enough to ruin the peace and harmony of our home, we're going to fix whatever that is so we don't have to deal with it over and over and over again. Is that the way you do things at home? I'll tell you what, a lot of homes, the way they do things is the way we do it in church. What we're going to do is we're going to just tell you something, Bill. Ooh, just forget it. We come back the next week, we go, hey, Bill, how's it going? You're doing all right? Nothing wrong here. Nothing to see here. And so the next time I get mad at Bill, I'm mad about Bill about this thing, and I'm mad at Bill the other thing too. And my mad gets taller and taller. And his patience with me gets shorter and shorter. And the Lord watches the whole thing and says, how in the world do you think you people are going to lead the lost to Christ when you're carrying on like that? None of you are coming home. Did your mama ever make you stay outside till you got things patched up between your brother and your sister and wouldn't let you come in and eat? That will fix some problems right there. That'll take care of it. There's one day we're driving down the road and my children are fighting over a toy in the back seat. My wife had had about all of that she could take. And this is an instance of what I refer to as commando parenting. And if you don't want your children to hear something about this, you might cover their ears right about now. My wife is exasperated and she's just over here holding her head. I think maybe her eyes are going to just fall out or something. She's just rubbing her temples and just making that face. And they're just fussing. And I'm the guy, I can just turn up the radio. I don't care. Make all the noise you want. It's no skin off my nose. But it really bothered her. And so it hit me. It's really bothering her. So I said, give that to me. And with my right hand, I reached back here. And as they placed it in my hand, with my left hand, I pushed the window down. We're going down I-65 about 70 miles an hour. And with one fell swoop, just woof, out the window it goes. I rolled up the window and I said, is everybody happy now? Because nobody got what they wanted. And brethren, that's the Lord talking to us about conflict with our brothers and sisters. Nobody gets what they want if that isn't fixed. If we're going to function as a local church, and we're going to have all the passion and joy God means for us to have, we better fix things that are broke, especially with each other. Another thing that can absolutely destroy your passion and zeal for the Lord is the fact that you're living a life that's not being supported by the people that you call your brothers and sisters. Some of us act as if we can be independent contractors for the Lord or mercenary soldiers for Jesus. We just think we can be out here and I'm just going to kind of operate on my own. I'm a long-range patrol Marine sniper for the Lord. That's what I am. I don't need to be with all these people over here. Oh, you're that strong, are you? You're just incredible. You're just so strong that you can operate all by yourself as a Christian. Is that what I'm hearing? That's right. I don't have to assemble all that off, and I'm good. Hoorah. Then why don't you come help the rest of us? Use some of your sniper training to get us all squared away. Help us get as strong as you. That's what the Lord meant the church to be. I just don't understand it. How can the Lord call the church His body, His bride, and His family, and we ever think it's just not that big a deal on a local level? How could we miss that? All of the one other passages in Romans 12 and 1 Corinthians 12, how do we miss that? Do you know what he's saying? I know you. You won't do it on your own. You can't do it on your own. You need people to lean on. Oh, I know you're super strong today. That's fabulous. But there will be a tomorrow if the world stands. And tomorrow may be a different story. You may not be strong tomorrow. You may be tempted beyond what your personal ability is to resist. And you may need your brothers or sisters to help pick you back up after you make that mistake. You're absolutely going to need people. Book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 4, verse 9. 2 are better than 1. I'm going to say that again. 2 are better than 1. Because if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. So tell me if you recognize this. Attendance gets spotty. Then it's inconsistent. Then they miss big, long gaps in between. Then they stop coming to church altogether. And they withdraw from all the relationships that they had started developing in the church. And then they're gone. And you go to them and you talk to them and you're like, hey man, what's happening? What's going on? And their hearts have gone completely cold. It's pretty frustrating when you try to talk about church discipline. People say church discipline doesn't work. That's a lie. Church discipline works. And let me tell you why it doesn't work in some places. When we wait 5 years to withdraw from somebody who's been gone because we're clearing the roster off, that's not withdrawing from somebody. That's not church discipline. That's kicking somebody out of our country club because they've not been paying their membership dues. That's what that is. When we have a local fellowship, we're bound and knit together by what every joint supplies, Ephesians 4 says. And when that person starts pulling away, we feel the pull. We feel the strain of that. We feel the snap when the tendon gives way, like you would if one gave way in your knee. And we feel the pain, and they feel the pain. And we go immediately to restore that because we've been close and now we're not. If we were never close, what are we withdrawing? If we didn't have fellowship, we can't withdraw it. If you think that's church discipline, well, then you're right. Technically, it doesn't work. But that's not church discipline. Church discipline is training, teaching, embracing, bonding, sharing. And if someone evacuates from that situation, someone pulls away from that, and we tell them, listen, we can't be friends like you want to be socially unless you're going to be part of the body spiritually. They feel the absence, they feel the pull, they feel the shame. That's when it works. And I'll tell you why it works. It's because of Hebrews 10 and verse 24. Let us consider one another. To consider one another. You know what that means? Let's think about the other guy. So I know Tom, and I say, I know what Tom's going through. I know what his life consists of. I know what his problems are. I know what his ups are and his downs are. And I can think about what I can say to Tom to encourage him if he's having a problem. Is this all tracking for everybody? But if I don't know him, what am I going to say? Nice tie, Tom. And meanwhile, he's having problems at work. He may lose his job. They may just, who knows what's going to happen. And what's on his mind is something completely different than the fact that he's wearing a nice tie. If we don't know each other, how then can we do the next part? Consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. Oh, that's what we should do together. And he says, he puts that in the context of assembling. He says, don't fail to assemble. Don't fail to meet your obligation with your local brothers and sisters, as is the manner of some. But rather, exhort one another. Exhort one another. And so much the more as you see the day approaching. You know what the word exhort means? It means to call to one side. And you say, doesn't make any sense at all. Bill, will you help me for a second? Stand up. When I call Bill to my side, this is the way I do it. Now, Bill, what we need to do is talk about this. And this is the direction we need to go in. Will you go with me? That's calling to one side. Thank you, brother. You're good at that. When you're calling someone to your side, what you're getting ready to do is you're getting ready to tell them, this is what needs to happen next. This is the step you should go in. This is the direction we're going to go in together. Maybe it's a corrective measure. You've called them to your side. Many times my daddy called me to his side. And we had a conversation. He'd dust off the seat of my pants. And I felt exhorted. He changed my mind about some things, you know. That was me being called to his side for the purpose of exhortation. And I improved. I got better as a result of that. And sometimes it's just a matter of being called over and being told there's a job that needs doing. Go do that. That's exhortation. Come together and exhort one another. Stir each other up to love and good works. Can you love? Can you do good works? Well, it's my job to provoke you to do those things. It's your job to provoke me to do those things. And people who live an unsupported lifestyle, who live out there on their own, who live on the fringes, who hang out on the exterior and keep everybody at arm's length, those people are certainly going to suffer lack of passion. Maybe it is that you've got an unclear purpose. Why do you get up in the morning? Oh man, if you don't know why you get up in the morning, it's hard to get up in the morning. Especially if you've been living the unbalanced schedule. What is it that you live for? I used to love this show. It came on VH1 called Behind the Music. It was the same story every week. Nobody's become somebody's through music. They make scads of money. They spend it and they blow it and they kill themselves over it. And they lose all their money. They'd been to the top. They saw it all. They spent it all. They got the t-shirt. And now they're poor. And all those guys said without fail, every one of those guys said, I'm enjoying myself now more than I ever have because I'm doing it because I love it. I'm not doing it for the fame. I'm not doing it for the money. Now, the only exceptions to those stories that now they're poor, they're just making a living, barely doing it, are the guys who died in the process of making all the money and stuff. They're the only exceptions. What the world is teaching us, one boring story after another, repeatedly, over and over again, is this. The American dream, the breakout phenom story of the year, doesn't make people happy. All the people who've got all the money, all the fame, all the connections, they're no happier than the people who don't have it. And you can be just as unhappy as the people who have it by wanting it and not having it. Isn't that a whooping? Ain't that just a whooping? Because it's not the money that's the root of all evil. It's the love of money. And you can love money and not have it. What is your purpose in this world? Once you've achieved the American dream and you stand here and you say, is this all there is? You're standing in the same place that millions of people have stood in before, and they did not find any purpose in that. Let me tell you what you need to hitch your wagon to. Something that leaves this earth. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on, for they shall rest, and their works shall follow them. Lay up your treasure in heaven, where rust does not destroy, and moth does not corrupt, and thieves cannot break in and steal. If your purpose every day includes something eternal, that you think about judgment, you think about heaven, you think about hell, you make one step toward heaven every day, and you help somebody else take a step away from hell and get better ready for judgment, if part of your everyday is that, you will love every day of your life. And if you've never had the thrill, the privilege of sharing a cooperative work with God that begins with a lost person and ends with a saved soul, you have never lived. Oh, it is the dream within a dream. I tell you, it is life itself to see the light bulb come on over somebody's head and hear them say, I need to be baptized. I know now. I've baptized 3 people in my swimming pool at my house because they couldn't wait to go to the building. I love it. I'd rather be sitting at a dining room table and studying with one person who's really interested in it than preaching here tonight. As much as I love this, and I do love this, I do love preaching, I will never get tired of that. I will never get tired of that. Because it's satisfying even if all my tires go flat. Even if the bank says they're going to foreclose on the house. Even if my suit has a hole in it. Even if my kids don't talk nice to me. Even if my wife just makes salad and that's all we had for supper. My life is rich and it's full as long as I get to do those kinds of things. And of course, when the devil uses circumstances to shrink your spirit and shrivel your heart while he's feeding your body and your carnal interests, and you are thriving outwardly and you're dying inwardly, of course, you don't have any joy. You've got the daily distractions and disappointments, and the little conflicts and the changes and the challenges. All the frustrations and the fears and the fatigues and the failures. No matter how much success you experience physically, when your spirit is starving inside of you, nothing else makes any difference. And that's why he tells us in Romans 12 that we're to present our bodies a living sacrifice. He begs us to do that because it's in our best interest. Not just because God wants to be worshipped, because God knows that through worship we are made better. We are enriched by our spiritual act of service. That when we nourish our spirit instead of nourishing our body, when we're not conformed to this world, but we're transformed by the renewing of our minds, when that happens, we thrive as people. It doesn't matter if cancer is ravaging our bodies. We thrive. It doesn't matter if we're ancient and none of our joints work right anymore, and our eyes are failing, and our hearing is failing. Even though the outward man is perishing, he says in 2 Corinthians 4, the inward man is being renewed day by day. And we look forward to shuffling off this old mortal coil. We look forward to the day when we leave this tent, because to be absent from this tent is to be present with the Lord. And when we feed that spirit, that part of us thrives. You all know the old story of the Cherokee grandfather who's talking to the boy. He says, there is within me a battle that rages every day. There is a black wolf who is evil and a white wolf who is good. And they just war all the time. And the boy says, well, which one wins, grandfather? And he says, whichever one I feed. An undernourished spirit will kill all your joy. Because when your joy is got all your eggs in this worldly basket, those can be taken away from you. The Apostle Paul writes from a prison in Philippians 1, and he says, you know what, I don't know, it may be better to die because I get to go and be with Jesus. But if I stay here, if I survive this, if they don't kill me, it'll be more fruit for my labor, and that'd be good for you, and that'd be good too. I cannot lose when my spirit is healthy. See, all of this began when we started talking about all of these things. We talked about passion. I want you to see how God feels about you. Way back in the book of Exodus in chapter 34 and verse 14, it says, for you shall worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. That's the way he feels about you. He said he'd rather die for you than live without you. He proclaimed without a shadow of a doubt his desire was for you to spend eternity with him. And he did that through the most selfless act of sacrifice ever known to humans. And that same Lord who did all of that, he told us there's one sin that makes him disgusted. One thing. Remember what that is? In the book of Revelation in chapter 3. He says, what makes me sick is people who come to me with lukewarmness, indifference. The people who come to me with this, that makes me want to vomit, he says. And what he says is, I counsel you to be zealous and repent. That means you can choose, my friend, to be passionate for the Lord. You can choose to be zealous and boiling over. If one of those things is going on in your life, get rid of it. And if we can help you with that tonight, why don't you let us? Let us know about your need. Come right now as we stand and sing.
We have heard the joyful sound.
sound. Jesus saves, spread the tide.